Hi, my name is Joe Yarshin, and thank you for tuning in to Kick in the Rear podcast. The real estate investment review, the goal of this podcast is to review books related to real estate, business, and entrepreneurship to help you with your real estate journey. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Welcome in to Kick in the Rear podcast. My name is Joe Yarshin. Today on episode 28, we're going to be reviewing The Wealthy Way by Ryan Pineda. Ryan Pineda is a real estate expert. He got famous for flipping couches on YouTube, and he has a very successful podcast, and he's written a couple of books now, and he just does a lot of really awesome entrepreneurial stuff. So I know he's big in the virtual real estate space, and he does NFT projects and all kinds of cool stuff. So without further ado, let's start off. I would like to characterize this book as a mindset book, first and foremost. And I would say there's elements of business, elements of real estate for sure, because of the real estate investing component that he's such an expert in. And then overall, I would just say this was just such a great read. I read it on the plane. I was on a trip for my best friend's bachelor party weekend, and I read most of it on the plane ride there. And I was really impressed with it. He actually has an app, and wealthyway.com. You can get this app, and basically it helps you organize your day by keeping track of your goals and what you want to accomplish in all areas of your life. So I'll kind of just break this down. So chapter 1, he does an introduction, but in part 1 is the mindset. And in chapter 1, risk and reward go hand in hand. He has a quote here from Babe Ruth: "Never allow the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game." So he was a former Oakland A's baseball player, professional baseball player. So he talks a little bit about his journey there and his job that he did in real estate on the side while he was also playing. He was a realtor. So on page 17, he gives action items at the end of each chapter. So I'm going to highlight those just because I think those are the best part of the book, are at the end of each chapter. And so action item number 1, finding a side hustle. 2, embrace exposure. 3, focus on the experience, not the end result. So chapter 2, leap enough and you learn to fly. He has a quote here from Steve Maraboli. It says, "Action separates the heroes from the cowards, the achievers from the complainers, the successful from the mere dreamers, the happy from the envious. It separates those who rise to the challenge of their goals from the haters who cower in the shadow of stagnancy." So really like this chapter as well. He talks about chasing your dream, costs of stability, futility of later. At the end of this chapter, his action items were simply identify what your dreams are, foster a growth mindset rather than a scarcity mindset, and then leverage regret. So using the potential regret to fuel your journey, failing forward in faith. And then chapter 3, discipline is a muscle. One of my favorite quotes in the book, from Abraham Lincoln. He says, "Discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most." So in this one, he talks about a few different things, but again, I want to skip to the action items because these are the high-level overview of everything in the chapter. He says, "Your time is limited, and as we've seen, so is your willpower. Don't let yourself off the hook in establishing new routines and habits." So he goes into the importance of establishing and keeping habits. He says, "Fatigue, irritability, hunger, aches, and pains are all real adversaries that can make grand ideas fall by the wayside." In chapter 4, quit the comparison game. Quote from Scott Stabile here, or Stabile: "After so many years struggling to keep up with you, I finally realized we're not even running the same race." So he kind of explains that quote here in this book, talking about envy and the journey as a baseball player, competition, all kinds of great things. Skipping ahead to the action items on page 51, he says to cultivate gratitude. Check your social media consumption. talks about that a lot. And then give generously. So he talks about charity, whether it's, in the form of your time or money or just the effort you spend on people. So in chapter 5, he says it's the law of reciprocity. Quoting Muhammad Ali here, he says, service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. I like that quote as well. Talks about generosity, getting through giving, a scarcity and abundance mindset. The action items on page 61, choose a charity and give, budget for giving. 3, join a social group or organization centered around volunteering. So I really like that one. Part 2 of the books is action. So chapter 6, he says you don't get more time. Peter Drucker quote here says, efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. Talks about morning routine, time management, life management, Pareto's principle, this 80-20 rule. I love that. I've heard that many times from many different real estate investors. He talks about Parkinson's law as well. Action items for this one on page 74, order your to-do list based on Pareto's principle, schedule your most challenging tasks when your energy is highest, and arrange your environment for minimal distraction. I've definitely implemented this in my life. Whenever I have challenging tasks for myself, I try to knock them out at the beginning of the day when I have the most energy. And typically if I don't do it, then they don't get done, or they get sent to the next day. And I don't like to do that. So it's a really good tip there. But 3 was don't neglect free time for money. So talks about buying time or, outsourcing labor that you're not great at to somebody who's an expert at it or that is good at it and that would do it better. So chapter 7, embrace the power of solitude. Henry Nguyen quote here, solitude is the furnace of transformation. Without solitude, we remain victims of our society and continue to be entangled in the illusions of the false self. So he discusses journaling in this chapter, content creation. Our action items for this one on page 84, regulate your use of social media, aim for consistency, not quantity, and practice thinking time from the road less stupid. So he talks about that book as well, one of his favorite books. All right. So on chapter 8, know yourself, quote from John Maxwell. He says, if you want to do a few small things right, do them yourself. If you want to do great things and make a big impact, learn to delegate. So something I like to talk to colleagues about is delegation, like things that, like, if they're going to take up a lot of your time and somebody else can do it better again, kind of going into Pareto's principle, you want to spend time on the things that are impactful, that yield the results, and then delegate the rest. So talks about do-it-yourself projects and the cost of doing that. Let's see, the importance of knowing yourself. He says action items on page 96 and 97, identify your strengths through a personality test. So he talks about how he uses personality tests to hire it within his own company and weeding out toxic personality traits of people that aren't a good fit for the company. But also doing it for yourself helps you identify what you want and what you're good at and what you're not good at. So knowing your worth, read Traction by Gino Wickman. I believe Alex Hormozy recommended that book as well. So definitely going to add that to the review list here. On chapter 9, track your wealth. So he has a quote from Benjamin Franklin here. If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. Love that quote. Simple, but effective. So this one, he talks about SMART goals. So SMART goal is a specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound goal. In the retail space, when I worked at the bank, a lot of our managers would talk about creating SMART goals for ourselves. This is great, I think, for any W-2 employee, but it's also great for the entrepreneur as well to keep track of your personal growth and development. He talks about his Wealthy Way planner. Again, I would highly recommend using this. I've only started using it for a few days, but it's already had an impact in my life. So the Wealthy Way planner stands for, it's the acronym WEALTH stands for Worship, Education, Affluence, Lifestyle, Team, and Health. So So he goes into each of those and what they mean and what the importance of those are. So action items, he says, sign up for the Wealthy Way, plannerwealthyway.com. I would recommend that as well. Establish a SMART goal for holding yourself accountable to using the Wealthy Way planner. Make a goal you are currently pursuing SMART. Part 3 is wealth. So in chapter 10, he says, give your life something greater than yourself. John Bevere quote here says, there's one person above all others who desires an extraordinary life for you. He is a father who delights, like any good father, in the achievements and happiness of his children. His name is God, and nothing will please him more than seeing you reach your highest potential. So he talks about worship, prayer, meditation, scripture reading, service, donating, and really love that chapter. I think he really showcases his moral compass, and Ryan shows really who he is as a follower in Christ. So I love him for being bold and doing that, knowing that he might alienate some people, but it just made me love his mission even that much more. So action items for this, page 125. He says, delve into the Bible, start with the book of John, follow a reading plan. Don't feel pressure to read too much too fast. Consider writing prayers as part of your morning routine. Seek out volunteer opportunities. So I love that chapter. I think that spoke probably more than any chapter to me. I started reading John myself from the Bible that I had that my grandfather gave me. So I think this was another good chapter. So chapter 11, there's always something new to learn. Howard Gardner quote says, if you think education expensive, try ignorance. So skip right to the action items here. He talks about podcast events, coaches, and mentors and how important they are. The action items for this is get smart about your regular reading practice, speak to speakers, and get a coach or a mentor. Chapter 12, put your money to work. One of my favorite authors, Robert Kiyosaki, quote here. It says, it's not how much money you make, but how much money you keep, how hard it works for you, and how many generations you keep it for. So building your foundation, talks about side hustles, your personal brand, investment, taxes, debt. Action items for this is identify and cultivate your core money-making skill, get clear on your online brand and content strategy. Reconsider your debt strategy, and that wraps that chapter. Chapter 13, how then shall you live? The quote by Jim Rohn, learn to be happy with what you have while you pursue all you want. He talks about margin, budgeting, how lavish of a life do you want to live? Action items for this, design your lifestyle, become an earner by asking, how can I afford it? So he's quoting Robert Kiyosaki again, instead of saying, how can I afford it? Rather than, can I afford it? So pay yourself first. And that wraps up chapter 13. In chapter 14, who's on your side? There's a quote here by Rick Warren. It says, when life on earth is ending, people don't surround themselves with objects. What we want around us is people we love and have relationships with. This chapter is all about your relationships with people close to you, your family, your friends, your colleagues, your employees, coworkers, social media followers, etc. And this one, the action items are really clear and simple. Prioritize family time. Ask yourself with each new social media post, how am I serving my viewers with the content rather than is this self-serving or for vanity or for likes? Join a community of like-minded individuals. Chapter 15, health is the ultimate wealth. Lewis Howe's quote here, Howe's rather, there is no greater failure than being rich in money and poor in health. There's no point in having money or success when you don't have the energy to use it for good. So he talks about diet and exercise, fasting. That was my biggest takeaway from this chapter was he discusses all the different types of fasting that's out there and the benefit he took from fasting. He discusses exercise and hobbies for health. Action items for this was leverage the power of stimulus control, journal your way to motivation, and get moving. So 100 out of a 100, score A++. Love this book. And I would say if you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with anybody you know that's interested in real estate, investing, entrepreneurship, business books, bippity boppity investment property. We will see you next week.